Hello there. I believe we're going to start with two very short bits of video. So, Mr. Devaney, roll VT. Thank you.
The desert has a way of drawing people back to it.
It's an amazing place that allows us to look into ourselves, discover things that we might not discover otherwise. Sometimes I do feel, and here I'm going to sound slightly superstitious, but there's an ángel de la guarda in this place. It has its own sort of protective angel.
My name is James Murphy, and I'm your host for the next hour. And I've asked each of our distinguished panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to give them a minute each, and I will cut them off after a minute because we've got a lot to cover. So we're going to start with you. Oh. Go.
I always find this a really, really tricky question, thing to answer because, yeah, I am general manager of NMC Recordings, so I, look after all the administration of the label and the day-to-day runnings of it. But I'm also an artist, a performer, a composer, and just like all you creative people out there, as many strings to your bows as possible. That's my motto, really. So that's me.
Great, 27 seconds.
Perfect.
She's Ellie, by the way. Next.
Well, I'm Alexander Parsons. I have a few strings to my bow, as I'm sure many of you do, and as do all of us as well. But primarily I'm a composer. I work mainly in television, also film, more recently in VR as well. And so, recently I've been responsible for scores to Grayson Perry series, the most recent series with Professor Green over the summer. I also scored the most recent documentary series about the murder of Stephen Lawrence. So that's my sort of composing side of things. As you saw from the video, I'm also in a band as well. But unlike kind of a normal band, we're experimenting with virtual reality as well. We've developed a virtual reality performance which incorporates scent, touch, and obviously sound as well. So our aim really in just exploring, you know, music and exploring.
Just a minute.
There we go.
More from him shortly. Next. Go.
I'm Kirsty, Devaney. Like I say, on there it says I'm a composer, but as we've kind of all talked about already so far, what I do as a composer moves and shifts and is sometimes more of one, sometimes something else. So I'm an educator as well, so I do a lot of education work. I've set up projects for young composers to promote creativity, and I'm also just finished my PhD. I had my Viva on Monday. I passed. And so, thank you. Now kind of research, education research is a part of my practice as well, is composing. And as a composer, most of the work I do is, or a lot of the work is for working with like youth groups or non-professional groups, as well as professional contemporary music groups and things as well. So, yeah.
Just in time. Great. And finally.
All right, I'm Ian Carter. It says there I'm a co-founder of From Here Records, but really I'm a musician just like everyone else, and I've had to find my way into different jobs just because just out of necessity. So yeah, composing, playing in a band, producing, being an engineer, running record labels, all that kind of stuff.
Great. Okay. So if I was Hercule Poirot or Columbo, I would be asking myself, what connects these four disparate entities, these four eclectic makers and doers? And what I would say to that is it's about their state of mind, it's about their proactive attitude and their entrepreneurial spirit. Here are four people who have built careers without a blueprint. And in doing so, they've asked themselves what they can do, obviously to benefit their own creativity, but also significantly to help other people's creativity as well. So over the next 50 minutes, I'm going to be quizzing them about all of that, and shortly we'll open the floor for you to do that as well. And just a word about that, because I was in that first session watching. We're musicians, so we sort of like, let's imagine we're one big orchestra. I know lots of you will have very burning questions about things that are very, very sort of niche and specific to you. I promise you all of us are going to come through that door, out into the foyers as soon as lunch starts. We're going to be really hungry. So save your really personal specific questions for then, and we will give you everything we can. Whereas if you're asking a question in the room, think about, will it have resonance to the other people listening? So we can make the most of all the time that we have. So I'm going to jump in. We're going to try and make this a bit more of a conversation than the last session as well. So like, feel free, team, to cut each other off or contend each other, and I will stop things if they start scrapping. So I wanted to ask, come back to this term, entrepreneurial spirit. I think you've got it. I don't know if you feel like yourselves, but where do you think it came from? Where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit?
It's a tricky one to say. I kind of think I've played it safe to a certain degree, because I work at NMC 5 days a week, so I've had a constant wage coming in. In fact, since I graduated, because I used to work at Hyperion Records as well. So I've built everything else around having this very, very safe platform of knowing where income's coming in, unlike everyone else that are freelancers. I'm sure there's lots of freelancers out there. However, you know, with that comes lots and lots of demanding things. You know, time is a problem for me. Having enough time to write music, having enough time to do all the other things that I really, really love. Yeah. So I would say that was a thing.
Who feels they haven't played it safe? Or maybe you all do.
Well, I always find the word entrepreneur as something that's, you know, quite a scary word. It's been said to me quite a lot. You know, what makes you an entrepreneur? I think you're an entrepreneur, but I've never felt that I was personally an entrepreneur. I like things that are new. I like things that are different. I always think back to when I was at school and I would listen to music that no one else would listen to. I don't think that was because I was trying to be different. I think it was purely because I got annoyed when someone else liked my favourite band. I was like, Joe loved that, so I've now got to get into this style of music. So I always quite liked doing something that was a little bit different. And I guess if I think about the way that I approach music and I approach a project now, I like to try and do it in a slightly different way. And so I think maybe it came from there. Maybe I'm imagining that completely. But, you know,
Yeah. Anything to add?
I mean, I started really out of necessity, so I was like producing a kind of, I mean, this was early 2000s, was producing grime and dubstep and stuff like that, and it was kind of before the internet was, just before the internet was a big thing where you could kind of send your music out like that, so we had to kind of do it all ourselves and, you know, press white labels and start a record label out of that, and any kind of thing like that has always come out of necessity, so you have to do it yourself, you know, you've got to, no use waiting around for labels to kind of give you money or whatever it is, especially back then with the music we were doing, no one was kind of interested and everyone did it themselves anyway, so that's what we did, and I kind of learnt that from the, you know, the earlier like jungle scenes and stuff like that. They always did everything themselves, so that's what we did, and you know, you've got a skill, you've got to get work somehow, so that's what I did.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You just got to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I decided after I'd left university that I did a music degree, that I wanted to be in a band, and I wasn't a very good guitarist, but I was a pretty okay violinist. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to buy myself an electric violin, and then I'm going to contact bands and see whether they want one. And then look where I am now, you know. So I think, yeah, you've got to make things happen for yourself.
So Alex said about, you know, this term entrepreneur, you don't think of yourselves like you think of yourselves as musicians, and I think one of the things that I think we often struggle with, like coming out of university or music college or anything, is, you know, we're artists, we're not business people. Do you think of, how do you think of yourself? Do you think of yourself as those of you who are self-employed, or that you run organisations, or what words fit you, or how do you explain that in your own psyche?
Well, when I graduated 5 or 6 years ago from Birmingham Conservatoire doing composition, what actually the university itself provided some business training free as part of a Deutsche Bank project. And I kind of went along and thought, okay, what's all this about, sort of thing. I'm leaving soon, need some money, need, you know, anything. I just grab anything that might help. So I went, and actually that was one of the best things I did, in just trying to just isolate, you know, what is special about me in particular, what things are unique, or what they call unique selling points with your business or with you as an individual, and also to identify, well, what isn't happening, kind of what you were saying, you know, or what isn't happening, or how can I push that, or is there a gap in the market? So again, business speak, but I thought, okay. And for me, I just found this really interesting, because as a composer, but I was very passionate about education and promoting composing to a wide audience of young people. So I was passionate, and I had those two things. And I thought, okay, well, and is there a gap? And for me, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of support for young people for composing. There is for instrumental, it's kind of, you know, orchestras or ensembles, choirs, so you can kind of do that, and it's social. I don't know if you remember being young, like if you were in a youth orchestra or choir, it's a big social thing. That's a really big draw. I thought we don't have that for composing, this long term. So I set up a project called the Young Composers Project that filled that gap, and it's been going for 5 years now. It's kicking off again in a couple of weeks, but provided this gap. But it was actually a formal business training, 2 days worth of training for free. That was really valuable for me. But again, I think you take it with a pinch of salt. You take aspects that were relevant for me and for my field, otherwise you can go into a thinking a bit more closed-mindedly, potentially less creative, you know, budgets and finance, which are important, but it's a balance.
Any of you else got something to say in relation to that? Next question. So I was aware that in the first session a lot of you declared yourselves to be students still, and it's a terrifying moment for all of us to sort of like step off that cliff edge when education finishes. So I wanted to ask the panel if you could share with us what were the first steps you took of your own accord as you were leaving education. I know you're just finally saying farewell to it just now, but what were the first steps you took? Or maybe you took them, the significant steps, quite time before you left. I don't know, but let's look at that moment in your careers.
As soon as I got out of university, it was like, right, what am I going to do? And I worked at HMV on Oxford Street in the classical department for 6 months.
That's closed down now, so we can't do that.
No, you can't do that anymore. But I have to say, it was a great grounding for me to know what customers liked, because then I sent out tons of spec letters to record labels, and eventually one fell on the desk at Hyperion, and they offered me a job. I mean, I don't think it's as easy nowadays. That seems, although I say that, I'm looking back with rose-tinted glasses. At the time, it was really, really depressing. But eventually, I got there, and I've stayed in the industry ever since. And it's a tiny industry, and you just end up knowing everybody, really.
I had a bit of a depressing time after university as well, I think. I mean, I finished my music degree, and then all of my friends left, and I stayed on for that extra year, and I did my master's in composition. And after that finished, none of my friends were around, and I was doing, alongside my kind of studies, I was I'd started DJing, so I was DJing quite a lot. Mainly at the weekends. But then, sort of in the background, I was also writing quite a lot of music. I was really into techno, and still am. So I was writing, lots of that. And then I was approached by, a few DJs, some of whom are, still making a lot of music now. And I was doing sort of ghostwriting for them. So I spent about a year just secretly in my bedroom, just ghostwriting, tracks for DJs who I won't mention their names, but that's and I loved doing that for a year, but kind of felt that it wasn't taking me tremendously far. So I ended up I went and visited my old head of music at school, who put me in touch with another school, and I then became a part-time teacher. So I actually also went into education and was there teaching part-time for nearly 10 years. So quite a long time.
I didn't go to university or anything. I did a YTS, which was a youth training scheme in sound engineering, because the way I was kind of at it is that you had to have a trade. So okay, I want to be a musician and be an artist and all that sort of stuff. I take care of like learning that sort of stuff myself and learn a trade in that world. So being a sound engineer seemed to make sense. I came out of school, did that for I don't know, it was like a year or something in Stoke Newton, and then I got a job in the studio, and that was it. And then I just did various different engineering jobs, producing jobs. Did ghostwriting for garage DJs, making beats for them, which was well, they paid you at least, so that was fine.
So am I getting a sense there, confession, that basically like no one really had a plan, no one had like a 10-year strategy or anything, but like you sort of just like reached out, grabbed the vine, because what you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there is no plan. I think that's the thing is you just get in there and then you find opportunities once you're in there. I mean, there's so many opportunities I've had as a result of working at NMC that have helped me as a performer, as a composer, and then vice versa. The contacts, the people that you just meet randomly. It's so important. It's really, really important. I get to do talks at universities. Talking to young composers. The next generation of composers. I mean, I couldn't have dreamed of doing that when I left university. Going to the Royal Academy to talk to students. What?
I think you never know when these connections are going to be made, and I think again with like from doing business training, it's like networking, but it's just being nice, being friendly, being honest, and being open with people, and being yourself, and going to things and being proactive in kind of just being out there. But I think like there's things that I've got recently that I have been set up probably since sixth form. I started doing some stuff in sixth form and made some contacts and kept contacts, and I got this job and a commission and then this and it spirals, and I had no idea that when I started. So I think it's just being aware that it can really come from anywhere, from anything. And I still don't know how I get certain jobs, and I get an email or phone call, and I'm like, how have you found me? Like, how do you know me? And why do you want me? And I'm really honoured. But but it's all through those networks.
Collaboration is so important.
Yeah.
From now, if any of you are students and you're at university at the moment, collaborate not just with other composers, but with performers. You've got the most amazing performers that that are with you there. Most of you have got studios there, so make the most of those opportunities. Artists, designers, filmmakers, all those people, because you never know. One of those people might end up being really, really successful, and you will benefit from that. Because you end up sort of like you can follow on the tail of success if you mix with the right people.
Yeah, every graduate in this room will tell you that the curriculum is just the basic. Don't just do that. It's about what you individually do on top of that with all the people and the resources around you. As you're telling me some things, I'm kind of thinking, was there a moment when you were like doing something, maybe for love or whatever, you were like, how do I monetize this? And were you able to sort of make steps towards that? I think that's something that vexes a lot of us in the room.
Yeah, money.
I think what you were saying, Annie, about having that something safe or having something regular, and I was really, really fortunate that through my education work, I got a PhD position which was funded and just provide, not loads, but a little bit every month, which has been stripped away now. I've finished, which is absolutely terrifying, so I'm kind of back at ground one again without sort of that regular income. But again, I think it is trying to balance that aspect and doing what you love, but then you do have to, I want to eat, I want to live in a house and things like that. So finding other streams that might do that might support then your other venture that you might do. So whether that's through teaching work or arranging work or any of these, having that kind of baseline to then have hopefully the time and the money to invest in something else, because it's definitely worth it to invest in it, but kind of need that bread and butter work as well.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that was, apart from actually thoroughly enjoying teaching for 10 years, I was there for 2 days a week, and the remaining days and throughout the evenings I would compose. And I was getting paid for money. I was in, that really privileged and lucky position that I was getting, little bits of money for small films. And then, people that I met that, mentioned it could be just someone who's working on something small, suddenly get their huge break. And you follow on, you go with that. But yeah, I mean, it took me that 10 years to get to a position where I'd decided that, I have enough money saved up. It wasn't a huge amount, but actually I'm going to be able to live. I'm going to be able to eat for a little bit. I've got a big project coming up, and because it's television, there's the back end, there's a few royalties coming in as well. I'm going to be able to survive for this amount of time, and then that remaining time that I was, I sort of spent teaching, I could then focus on getting a business together, I guess. But yeah, essentially getting a business plan together and turning what I love doing into something that will generate an income.
I think if you're passionate about it and you work at it, people will recognise that over time. I think if you just love what you do and you work at it, people go, oh, that's pretty cool. Or could you do something similar? Or how could we work together and things like that? But yeah, I think things do take time, and I think sometimes we expect immediate results for things. And there is that argument, I'm sure we've all had, whether we take on free work or if we invest things for free, or should we be paid? And I think that's a really contentious argument. Do you do that? Yeah.
This came up in the earlier session. Any thoughts on that issue about when you take one for the team and when you actually stand up and say, respect what I'm doing? Have you ever had those instances?
Well, I just think that you're working and you should get paid to work. Like in some situations it's fine. And we used to, you talk about networks of people that you work with and stuff like that. You do kind of work share for people. So somebody might need a piece of music for this, but they can design it. So you need someone to design a website for you. So you kind of exchange kind of work for free like that with other people. But there's a point where, and we've sort of had it, and someone will go, no, look, we're all professionals. This is time and work and money, and we should pay each other to do this properly. So as far as working with friends and your sort of like network of people, I think that you should try and pay each other where possible. And also, if someone don't want to pay you, then I don't think that's not very good. I think you should get paid.
So are you quite frank about that kind of thing up front?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you all set something up, like in your careers, like multiple things. So I'm sure there are people here in the room who probably don't know if that's their calling. Maybe they just want to be in an orchestra, or they just want to be part of something that already exists. But it seems to me something that musicians can innately do. It seems to be part of your DNA, really. So let's just talk about setting something up, and I wanted you to share with us maybe either a particular experience or just general principles for initiating something successfully. Like, what does it take in terms of planning, contacts, finances, and by all means tell us about things that went wrong as well.
So really we started From Here Records to put out the music we do with a band. And we're a traditional music band, play English traditional musics, long story. But one of the things that came out after that was putting out a compilation of other artists, other traditional music artists, some well known, some not well known. And I mean, again, like, it was kind of out of opportunity. Do you know what I mean? Out of necessity, sorry. We started up the label to do the band stuff, and then we was like, all right, we've got this label, we've set this up, we've got the structure, we've got a distribution company who sort of believe in us, and you know, want to do work, good people as well. So we took the opportunity to record this record, and that involved. And I must admit that I didn't do it. I can't take the credit for. We applied to the Arts Council to get funding for that, and we got funding for that, and that was. It all seemed to fall into place. But like I said, it all started out of necessity, and we were like, we wanted to do this. We thought, right, we're going to do this, and then we sort of did everything we could to make it happen.
And you were a sound engineer, so you had that already.
I had that already.
At that first moment when you set it up, you were like, what things did you feel like I don't have? Like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do it. I've never done this before.
Like I say, by the time when we set up From Here Records, we kind of knew. But then that's a really important part of when you're setting up something like that, is not necessarily knowing everything that you know, it's knowing stuff that you don't know, and knowing who to get to do that. Do you know what I mean? You know, like when you talk about your support network, or like when you find people who are good to work with and you work well together, like hold on to each other and work together well. Do you know what I mean? You know, because that is, in any business, it's a treasured thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's like getting people to. Yeah, getting people who, like, so okay, I don't know how to distribute a record, like deal with warehouses and shipping out records to these places. So you find someone who's really good, knows how to do it, and then they'll help you, and they'll go da-da-da-da, and you'll be like, right, and you can go off and do that. And you can spend your time doing what it is you're good at. You know, that's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, when we started Miro Shot, it was, you know, it was myself and one of my best mates from secondary school, and we were sat in a room just writing some music together. We hadn't really spoken in years, and we thought, we had this little idea. Both of us had just read Ready Player One. You know, it inspired many people, and it really inspired us. And we thought, well, you know, there must be something that we can do to heighten a live music experience. But we had no idea what that experience was going to be. So, and you know, the thing with VR at the moment is, people are exploring it, but there is so much more to explore, and there's so much that we're realising, and we've realised over the past 2 years, that we don't know. And with everything we find out, it makes us want to do more. And so, you know, every single junction, there's something else we don't know how to do. So, you know, you mentioned kind of having your reliable contacts, you know, people that you work well with, people that you get on with, and people that you're inspired by. Yeah. And I think, you know, that you treasure. For example, we had no idea how to live code a visual. So an audience member who's watching the band will be floating through a forest, and the next minute he will see, you know, he will actually be watching the band itself and the people around them, but with a mask. You know, we had no idea how to do that. But our friend knew exactly how to do it, and he could do it in, you know, in a few lines of code. And so it's that, and you know, in terms of the actual visuals themselves, having, you know, great designers, just made it something, or made our sort of tiny little idea that we got from reading a book, into something that we're, you know, we've been really lucky to be, you know, to perform at Somerset House, at BAFTA, you know, across Europe, and it's just been, you know, a really fantastic experience. But you know, on our own, we would never have been able to fathom, you know, what to do. So I think having those contacts is vital.
I bet some of you are thinking, I wish I had friends like these people.
But you tend to, I mean, even if you don't, then somebody you know will know. Or is it the kind of separation? Everyone's kind of connected. And what I found is people are just really willing to help. people are often, majority of the time, are nice, and when you are, you won't be an expert in all of these things, and you will come across challenges, but actually people are really willing to help you out. And I think that's what I found very much so. But also, you know, with kind of mapping out who you know and where you can have support, and if you don't have that, then finding out, but making a plan. Anybody that knows me will know I love a plan. A plan might change, and a plan always actually does change, but having this kind of set, kind of having some direction, some goalposts, some things to aim towards is really important. Well, it motivates me. It's something that's really quite daunting, especially if you're doing something new that hasn't been done before. So having those kind of key moments.
I think the key piece is of organising yourself as well, because as musicians you could spend every waking hour and then some just doing the art, like just being musicians. So it's like knowing when to stop. It's like, right, I'm going to stop doing that now because I've got to be the administrator, I've got to be the manager, I've got to be the entrepreneur. How do you manage your time?
This whole idea on its head a little bit, coming from NMC's point of view, is like we're an established record label. We've been going for nearly 30 years. We know we are good at certain things. You know, we understand distribution, we understand copyright, we understand, you know, how to deal with press and media, all of that kind of thing. And what we realise is there's lots of smaller labels out there that don't necessarily have all of that experience, but we can offer it to them. So what we've been doing over the last couple of years now is we've been taking on smaller labels like Huddersfield Contemporary Records, for example. We've just taken on Club in a Girl and a new label called Multimodal, and then offering them a distribution system through NMC's network. So it's helping these smaller labels gain from our experience and helping them understand how a record label works in the process, you know, literally setting them up. So project management as well as distribution. And that's something that we're developing now and you know, taking on other labels in the next few years. So.
Great. Any other insights into how you manage your time and organise your career?
Don't sleep much. Forget about sleep.
Yeah, just I think being quite clear when things are taking place and marking them out. I went a bit crazy doing this though, with managing PhD, education work and still composing. But what I actually realised is I couldn't be everything all of the time every day. So I actually had a kind of this journal that I used, and you kind of mark out what you want to do. So for me, you know, PhD research, composing, and being a good friend, you know, calling up my family, all of these things. I think we're under so much pressure to be all of these things. Go to the gym, don't eat junk food all of the time, and what I found was I couldn't be this perfect version and do all of those every day. I think I had like one day where I did it and I was like, yes, I'm on top of the world, but I was exhausted the next day and I couldn't do anything. So I think it's just sometimes prioritising, but knowing sometimes that isn't your life the whole time. So if I've got a lot of teaching on, you know, that isn't what I'm going to be doing the whole time, but mapping out, well, I'm going to be composing in this, but also being clever with your time. Sometimes, you know, trying to find half an hour. Well, I've got half an hour, 45 minutes. What can I do and achieve in that time? And something with this journal really taught me to think of is, what do you need to do today to make your day successful? Now that doesn't mean I'm going to finish my PhD. That's not going to be, well, that happened one day. You know what, and it started to move from being like, oh, I need to achieve this, I need to achieve that. It was more like, I need to have a day that, you know, where I look after myself, or that I do as much as I think I can, or I feel I can do, so that you don't burn out. And it really, like I say, this journal really helped to frame my mind and not feel bad, because if I didn't achieve all those things and be all those people to different people, I felt like a failure. But actually it's a long game. It's not, you don't have to be that, you know, do it by next week. It's a long game, and I work a lot with undergrad musicians and composers, and I feel like there's this real rush. Like, I need to achieve, I need to be this now, I need to go and do my master's now. And I'm like, why now? Why is that? And I don't know if it's something about kind of youth image or this pressure to succeed, whatever that means. But that's something that I've really learned over the last year or two trying to manage all these plates. Yeah.
I had a really lovely piece of advice from the lovely composer Erin Wallen, who is an amazing example actually of someone who gives her time to people. But I was saying to her how I was finding it really tricky, you know, on top of a full-time job to write music, and she just said, make sure you just allow some time each day. It doesn't have to be many hours. It doesn't have to be an hour. It could be just on that journey from your home to the office. But as long as you're thinking about music all the time, coming up with ideas, listening to things that you've already done, then you're on the right step. That, you know, and I just thought that was really, really good, because you know, sometimes you just don't have time. You know, other things get in the way, like you say, with friends as well. I have to mark things out in my diary. You know, make sure I go and see mum and dad. You know.
I got a bit obsessive with it in kind of mapping out when I could see people and what I could do. I'm not sure it's the best way to live your life, but if you're in a particularly busy time and you need to, I did literally half an hour slots, plan everything, but I planned when I was going to phone people. I mean, it moves, but I was like, I'm going to do that today. I'm going to, that will make my day successes if I've been there for a friend or something, not always music or career related. Help me get through it. Definitely.
I'm sure a lot of people here have instigated something and it's got so far, and then maybe they found they've hit a wall, or you just can't get the traction going for it. So I wanted to ask about your experiences of that. When you found a wall or something, how have you stopped, paused, taken stock and overcome it, or how has it potentially led you to change direction? Any examples?
Put the kettle on. It's always a good way. Just move away from the problem and then come back to it. It's always the best thing. I always find, well, there's a number of things that I find to clear my head. One of them is gardening. But it could be whatever it is that you do. You know, I think that's the way. And I just think that you just got to be level-headed and practical, and the idea will eventually come. Talk to people. I mean, you know, if you can't find the solution, I'm sure someone else will. So, you know, that's what colleagues are there for, to help you.
That's great advice. I mean, most of my work is very solitary. You know, outside of the band world, it is very much me in a studio composing, you know, pretty much the whole score on my own, until I'm able to then bring in, you know, some musicians if the project requires that. And often when you're working on your own, you know, you'll develop this hatred for what you've written. I develop hatred for what I've written constantly. Or you'll love it, and then you'll come back to it 5 minutes later and realise it's awful. What I did sort of about 3 years ago, I thought, well, I'm going to buy myself a new instrument. I mean, I've been really interested in electronics, so I bought myself a modular synthesizer. So it's kind of, it's grown now. I've got kind of racks of Eurorack modules, and each of these modules can be patched into other modules, and they make unusual and unpredictable electronic sounds which go on forever. I do that now, and so if something is going badly, I will turn to this beast and I will patch something and see what comes out. But actually, what's been so brilliant about it is I've kind of, through sort of buying and building this thing, I've even built little modules myself. You know, in kind of doing that, I've kind of created a sound which I'm now getting work for, which is really quite strange. You know, I sort of composed. I composed the music for the last Grace and Perry series, which has a very specific sound. There are lots of kind of strange warbly sounds in the background. Those are the moments that I was really panicking and thought I'll turn to this thing. But then, you know, since doing that, you know, people hear that and think, oh, I've never heard that before. I've never heard that before, but, you know, that's okay. So let's, you know, we'd really like that sound in our film. And, you know, it wasn't just one chord, it was quite a few chords after that. And so I've kind of found that in getting myself out of this hole, I've kind of created a new world to explore, which has been great. So that's what I did. I bought a new instrument.
I would say that I've lost a lot of friends to those modular synthesizers. They don't make it, you know, they just collect those things now. Take your time. like don't be, if you've got say if you've got an 8-hour session, I kind of learned it from engineering and producing bands and stuff like that. And it's like, if you're going in for an 8-hour session, you might only spend 2 hours doing real creative work that is good, but you've got to let that happen, like not beat yourself up about it. If it's not coming, it's not coming, and just let it not come and do something else, like everyone else was saying, find somewhere else to look and stuff like that. But just more importantly, like, don't kind of be going, oh God, I'm not thinking of anything, you know, I've got nothing to, you know, oh, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be bad. Just, you know, it's fine, just give it some time, and then it will come, and you'll end up finding that you might do 4 hours of procrastinating and 1 hour of the work where you get everything done right in that real short amount of time. Whereas if you were kind of grinding against it, you might spend 6 hours doing that and nothing comes. Whereas if you take that pressure off yourself a little bit, not too much. Do you know what I mean?
You can accept that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Eventually you'll get there.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Just enjoy the fact that you kind of messed up, or you think maybe you've messed up. Yeah,
watch some cat videos for half an hour or something.
I don't think we talk about failure enough as musicians. It's certainly a lot of higher education culture is utterly stacked against it. It's not something you can do at all. But it seems to me an essential part of everybody's story. I wondered if any of you would be so open as to talk about any things that failed for you on a big or a small scale, and what your perspective is on them now.
Don't be afraid for things to be terrible and get rid of it. Like you say, you can be spending weeks on a piece of music, especially when you're composing something for someone, and you can spend, you're like, okay, this is it, and then you come back to it, you're like, no, this isn't right. And you just don't be afraid to scrap it. Don't keep on at something just because do you sort of know what I mean? Like you get to a certain point and you're like, oh, this is bad, but oh, maybe if I take some of it away and maybe I could make it better. No, just scrap it, get rid of all of it, start again. Do you know what I mean? And it's fine. You will get something better because you'll remember what you did, what was wrong. Right?
And not just music as well, but an organisational idea as well. You're like, I'm really gonna, this is the framework I want, this is the initiative I want to create, and actually you have to find that might not always be when you float it on the water.
Yeah, it'll work.
You've got to take risks.
Yeah, take risks.
You've got to take risks, otherwise you don't get anywhere now. And you've just got to think a little bit outside the box, and hopefully that most things work. And thankfully at NMC, most things tend to work, which is great. You know, failure tends to be just like not having enough money. Really, that's kind of to be able to achieve the things that we always want to do. You just got to give it a go.
You learn from it, innit?
Yeah, exactly.
You learn from it.
I think with social media, though, can be really damaging, especially, well, not damaging, but if you have had a particular fail, or maybe it's not just one thing, but it's a number of things, or your plan hasn't gone, or things have fallen through, you didn't get that funding, or you didn't get that opportunity you applied for. And you go on social media to chill out. Maybe that's your time away. I'll go on social media. I wouldn't, because guaranteed somebody will post, I've just got this commission. I've just got this job. I just got this. Oh, I'm wonderful. And it's great. And you want to be really happy for them. It's not that you're kind of bitter, like I hate you. It's not that. But it's, people they're not promoting their failures, because I bet they've also had a ton of things that they've tried for years, and then they've got this one thing, so they want to share it. I did it when I passed my PhD, I went yay on social media, but actually there was so much grit, there was so much that went wrong during that process, and I think we don't promote failure enough, otherwise that would probably be a bad business model to be like, look, I'm terrible, I failed at all these things. But I remember not receiving, so for the project that I set up, education project, I applied for a grant to set it up for 10,000 when I left uni, and that was going to set me up. If I get that, I'll be okay. And I didn't get that, and then I didn't get a job at like all the jobs I applied for, and I just was hit rock bottom and went, what now? And I actually I blogged about this process, and it was really about all these kind of failures and about failure, and so many people just came to help and were really supportive as well. I'm not saying promote everything that you don't get, but actually I think social media can be an odd place.
It's worth having a look on the website of the composer Cheryl Frances Hode, as well as her actual CV. She's got a whole page which is her CV of failures, and it includes that she applied to my organisation 14 times, and then on the 15th time she got the grant. Yeah, good for her. More of that, please. We're about to open to the floor, but I just want to ask you, I suppose, given your sort of principal specialisms, if each of you would just give us a couple of tips or insights onto either being commissioned as a composer or making a recording, how you make it happen, making the best of it, what to be wary of. Quick things.
Being commissioned. Do you want to? I was going to say being commissioned. I mean, my first commission came as a result of me working with another composer as an assistant. So I started off just helping him out, creating little templates for him to work with, which then led on to me taking a job that he didn't want to do. So that was how I got my first job. But then after that, it's the networking. So it's hanging around after events like this and meeting directors, making friends, meeting other composers as well. Maybe you'll work with another composer on a project that will get to your next big project. So, I mean, being commissioned is about making sure that you're the person that, if it's TV, that director is thinking of, or that production company is thinking of. And if everyone knows who you are, then maybe you'll get that commission.
Any other quick ones?
I mean, recording, you've got basically two options. You do it yourself, or you get a record label to do it for you. It's a difficult world out there. Record labels are struggling, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make it work for you. If you're doing it yourself, then you've got different places like Bandcamp where you can put music up, and you've got ways that you can get things on all streaming platforms and iTunes. Of course, the tricky thing about when you're doing it yourself is you've also got to look after the promotion, and then you've got to promote it on social media, and it's very, very noisy on social media, as we know. So how do you get that message across? So many composers I know want to be on NMC, and I can understand why you would want to be on a record label, because you become part of a family, part of a catalogue. Sadly, NMC only has like 9 releases each year, funding constraints and all of that. So it's a real tricky one for us to get everybody out there and their music. But what I would say to everyone is make sure you put your music on your website so that record labels can hear your music, and do get in contact with us. We can't promise you that we can release your music, but at least we know you exist. So many people who expect that things are going to happen, and they're not going to happen unless you tell us what's happening, because I can't keep on top of what everyone's up to. Very notably, I'm just going to say one thing, because it's something that's quite, we're working on a lot at the moment, is that until probably April, May this year, 90% of the composers that were contacting us were men. And it wasn't until I actually did some proactive emailing to some composers, women composers that I knew, that I started getting album ideas coming in. And as a result, in the release schedule, maybe 2-3 years down the line, it has immediately changed what it looks like. And that was just one little proactive push. So I would just say, everybody, whoever you are, please, make sure you contact us, or share your music, or tweet us, or whatever you do, just so that we're aware that you exist. We can't promise anything.
It's like you were saying earlier, all those speculative letters you wrote at the start of your career,
yeah.
Most of them go into the ether,
of course they do.
One of them's
yeah.
stick.
Don't be disheartened if we don't get in contact with you, or we can't do anything with it. Or
write again a few months later,
write again.
And
exactly.
Ellie will be like, I've heard of this person before.
Exactly.
Just because you sent a letter a few weeks before, but it's
Absolutely
fine.
That, yeah.
Keep
yeah. And then I'll recognise your name on social media, and I'm like, oh, right, that guy, yeah. And then you join the dots.
Time is racing. Quick insight.
Take what you do seriously. If you want other people to take you seriously, you've got to take it seriously. So that's it.
Say yes. Even if you're terrified, close your eyes, say yes, put the phone down, and then go, how am I going? And then work it out. And then problem solve and figure it out. Because you will. Trust yourself. You'll be able to. But just say yes.
Leap of faith. Okay, time for some questions. As I say, do try and make them relevant to everyone in the room, and the shorter the question, the more you'll have my undying devotion for life. Hands up. My colleague doing it. Iva, we've got one already. Over there, go.
It's on, is it working?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, my name's Aaron. I'm an artist, writing, releasing music at home, all that stuff. I just wanted to say thank you, Kirsty, for what you said. I really connected with everything you said about time management, and I'm also someone who very much struggles to balance all of those different interests and areas in my life. I've been a designer longer than I've been a musician, so I design all of my own branding and videography and all that stuff. And I just wanted to ask you, like, with those amazing developments that you've had over the last 2 years with managing your time, do you feel like, is that something that you feel like you've conquered now? And could you maybe, like, go into some specifics as to what you can recommend to someone who's in a very similar position at the moment, also with university and, yeah, all that stuff?
Concrete.
Yeah, it's like about concrete, so when the PA is not bringing as much of the sound back, but it's about how we mastered time management, is that kind of right?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Kirsty. Oh,
yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, Kirsty, because you said that you feel like you've really come leaps and bounds with that over the last couple of years. How you can recommend someone can do the same?
Buy post-it notes. Love post-it notes. Prioritising things, but also, yeah. So the journal I use was called Best Self Journal, and I say, and it highlights. You're it's in 13-week projects, and you isolate the kind of 3 things that you want to achieve in those 13 weeks, and then you go to weekly goals, and then you go to daily goals as well. I think we're kind of all in 3s. So you see the bigger picture. So every single day you're, even if it's just that little thing or going to the gym, I did it. Like you're progressing to that goal. That wide goal, so kind of having that long-term, medium, and then daily goals. So
we're going to have to press on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We'll be available for more guru coaching in the foyer in about 7.5 minutes. So we've got next one over there.
I guess a lot of people are sitting here thinking, yes, but I've made my music and I think it's great. How do I get anybody to listen to it? So, you 4 there, how did you get people to actually listen to something, or do you get people to listen to something you've already done? And we haven't making it happen in that respect.
I think Ellie's advice about getting it on your website and getting the word out to people was brilliant, but any other thoughts?
Send your music to broadcasters. Get your music played on the radio. If you've never done it before, it doesn't matter what style of music you've got, but BBC Introducing, you can upload classical music to BBC Introducing, you can get it on Late Junction, you can get it, you just put it...
How do you write to the fortress that is Broadcasting House?
You go on the website and it has, please send us your music.
Right.
It's just BBC Music, all of you can do it.
Or
I did it, it worked.
the building in about an hour's time.
Well, yeah, that's it.
You can contact, if it's production music, you can contact libraries, you can contact commissioners directly by emailing. Their emails are on the website. That's what I did. I emailed everyone, just so they knew who I was. Essentially. So find their details and contact them.
I take stuff directly down to the radio station with the BBC stuff. I found out when they were broadcasting and went and giving records in person. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did actually. I did it with John Kennedy on XFM. I know it's not like classical music and stuff, but I was able to meet him and actually know that he's like a good friend.
I'm in the building now.
Yeah. Often as artists we rely on our music to be our means of expression. That's why you are artists. But actually we have to put yourself out in front of it. That sounds like a really fun, scary thing for most of us to do. But yeah, got to try and do it. Who's got a microphone in their hands? Yes, over there somewhere.
Hello. Stu Simpson, Hadrian's Union, Oregon.
Hello, mate, you right?
I've been doing music for over 20 years, and still, I'm 40 years old now, and I still have to work a bar job. When is the point where you're able to, when do you decide to make the leap from working a job that you need to do to make some money to pay the bills, to actually being able to work professionally in the music industry? I travel up and down the country, and I play in different folk clubs and festivals, etc., and I'm still having to do work which is pretty awful.
Maybe find work that isn't as awful. I'm still working to enable me to do the other things that I want to do. I think, all of us have to do other things to pay the bills. Not many composers or artists do it solely, 100% not when they're starting out especially, or maybe not ever. Maybe get a different job from the bar job that you don't like.
Or a bar and music venue, so you can enjoy the music there, and then you can maybe meet the dudes who you can hand that CD to, or something.
I live in Cumbria.
There's a great music scene in Cumbria. I'm from Cumbria. We'll talk about that later on. Next, there's one over there, yes.
Hi. How do you maintain your integrity as an artist when your client wants you to do something that is against your sound?
Be very strict to it to a point. You know, if you feel that it's the job that you're on is going to branch away from your sound, and you really want to keep that integrity, then consider not taking the job. Or in TV, if it's a sound that actually you're not very good at. I'm quite often faced with immense challenges and so many different styles of music that I might have to compose for one program. But actually, sometimes there's a track in there that you think, well, why don't you find something for that moment? I will then create what I do really, really well. Yeah, so I mean, don't be afraid to say no, or to say, use that other bit of music, and then I'll do what I do.
Next. Down here.
Hello, I'm Imogen, I'm a trumpet player and also a co-host of a new podcast called Musicians Weekend. It's about the freelance lifestyle, it's kind of weird and wonderful, but called that because our weekends are never normally Saturday and Sunday. And basically, we've done one series and we're having demand for a second series, which we're really keen to do, me and my two co-hosts. But we don't really feel we can do it for free anymore because it's a huge time constraint, and it's not something we're thinking about making any money from, but in terms of we'd like to not be out of pocket from our time and things. But it's a really hard thing to know how to value your time. Is it £10 an hour? Is it £40 like teaching? I don't know we don't know where to start really with it or who to ask. So obviously you've got experience with Arts Council funding and things. What would your advice be for funding something like this?
I mean, podcasting world is a strange world to make money out of, because usually when you've hit the route a lot of podcasts I know go down was when they hit a certain amount of listenership that they can get sponsorship through advertising. So, I don't know, does anyone listen to podcasts? There's always a few adverts in the middle that they'll get the host to read out. That's a good way that's the first way of doing it. I think when it comes to funding, when it comes to Arts Council stuff with something like that, it really has to have a cultural kind of relevance, and there has to be a little bit more than just a podcast, if you sort of know what I mean. It's a very difficult one, because I think with podcasting it has to kind of just be free until you can make money out of it. There's not really a sort of easy answer for it, do you know what I mean?
Maybe trying to keep it fresh, so it's something challenging you. So I found that with my education work, I didn't get paid for the first year and 2 years, but I kept doing new things. So I still was gaining something from it. So it wasn't just oh, I'm doing this again, oh, I'll do that. I just always kept it new, so I was still developing and now it is paid and it is funded. So something to think of. So you're getting something out of it as well.
One last question, make it a quick one, a good one, over there by the door, yes.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Hugh Williams. I would like to share something with the students, especially in this room. If you, as I did when you graduate, take the job seekers allowance for a couple of months during the summer while you're enjoying the sunshine, you are eligible for the new enterprise allowance, which will give you an income from the government for 6 months. You will have a mentor, and they will set you up as a businessman in self-employment, as I did. That was the first great thing I did. The second thing that I did was I spent about £100, and I immediately met somebody through this network who gave me £15,000 worth of work. And that network is the ISM. You can join for £15, not 100 as I did. It's a no-brainer, and only £50 to graduates. Go for it.
Okay, as the gentleman is illustrating now, every single person in this room has a good bit of advice for everybody else here. I have loads more questions to ask. I haven't had time for them. I'm so sorry. We will be out in the foyer in 3 minutes' time. Please come and accost us, but accost each other. someone in the room has a solution to your problem. Just to say, it's lunch now out there. Please return at 2:15, and a huge thank you to my wonderful colleagues, Ian and Kirsty and Alex and Ellie. Thank you very much.